And you're hearing some of these Club World Cup guys already talking about how hot it is and I can't believe it. And then you look up the weather and it's 85, with no humidity, 85 Fahrenheit, which is 29 Celsius. Then they're complaining about that. And it gets so much hotter. Obviously, you're laughing. You played in Miami. You know what I'm talking about. Sound the alarm. We're back for another episode. I think I just jump scared Julian, but we're back for another episode of the Player Manager podcast. And we have so much important stuff to talk about with you today. The unbelievably massive, important tournament, the Club World Cup. Or is it? Or is that sarcasm? I don't know. The Gold Cup as well, where the U.S. didn't send its best players because they're busy standing behind Donald Trump in the Oval Office for some reason. Shout out to Weston McKennie, who is in the middle of a presidential press conference. We're going to talk about all of that stuff, but there is one important message before we bring in the main part of this duo, Julian, and that is please subscribe. 84% of the views on YouTube were non-subscribers on the past episodes. So every time you subscribe, Julian will do one podcast with a beard again. And I think that's a reality that all of us want to live in, right? I mean, the beard's gone now.
It's gone. I told you last week that it was going to be gone.
I know, but I really
kept it clean too.
I hoped you didn't mean it. I know. This is actually our first dual-wielding, clean-shaven podcast.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I mean, let us know how you feel about my bare face. Apparently I look 19 again, which great. I got ID.
Is that what your mom said over the weekend?
You're right. That's what my mom said. Fine. Whatever. Okay. Unfortunate news though on your front. You guys went out and lost to San Diego, and I hate to bring it up, but I know we have a good number of Minnesota United listeners on the podcast. So bit of a weird game though, because it's kind of out of rhythm with all the Club World Cup stuff.
Oh, and that's a terrible mistake and an own goal.
In the first couple minutes on an own goal.
Dreyer from distance. Oh my goodness! Here's Pereira from distance. Spilled. Yeboah! Dreyer. And it sneaks in. Spiel. Now Dreyer. Sitting on a hat trick. Now delivering this time. And it gets all the way through. Milan Olaski looking for a brace off the bench and to seal all 3 points, and he does just that.
Yeah, definitely out of rhythm, it's just a strange game to have in the middle of this huge break, essentially, where we have break before and a break after, and but ultimately no excuse, right? Like we were up 2-1 at halftime and should have kind of seen out the game, and to give up 4 goals in general is not great at home. You don't tend to win a lot of games, and so we got to be better. You got to look at it and got to come back out of this break now different, I think, and heading into July, big month. I think obviously the end of June here with the couple games that we have left, and then July we have the Open Cup quarterfinal and all those kind of games coming up. So we can't be falling into any sort of lulls or anything like that. We gotta try and get out of it and let this be just a one-off. Where honestly, San Diego is a good team, man. They're the first team that I felt like really was able to break us down in our shape, and that's easier said than done if they were the first team to do. So credit to them and credit to what they've done over these first few months of the season, where they haven't been together very long as a whole club. So we're here. We're going to continue obviously working now, and we're getting back to it. Had a few days off, but obviously strange how MLS plays, right? Like with the Club World Cup, you have the Gold Cup, Gold versus Club World Cup. Like, who are you going to watch? Oh, there's also MLS. Oh, let's watch that. Throw that.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was surprised that you guys had a game at all. With those two tournaments going on, I mean, the Club World Cup is one thing. Obviously, you have a couple of clubs from MLS that are going to be involved in that. But then the Gold Cup, I feel like the Gold Cup is in many ways an MLS tournament. I mean, there's a lot of teams that go to the Gold Cup and have a significant number of MLS players on their roster. I mean, outside of Guatemala, who apparently is just rocking up with all dudes from the Guatemalan League, which I learned from the broadcast team the other day, which is crazy. Their starting lineup had 9 guys from the Guatemalan League, but most teams, like, whatever it be, Jamaica, what have you, they're going to have a good number of guys from MLS. And so the teams are just going to be significantly watered down, right? And I mean, how much does that affect, as a player? Are you looking at these games and it's kind of like, well, It's like when you're playing a pickup game with your friends, but half your friends don't show up.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. I mean, a few guys obviously weren't in a national break before, so they got there a couple days beforehand. Bunch of work qualifiers, I think, were happening in Europe. So we had Robin Lod go to play with Finland, and a couple other players. But yeah, it's strange, and I think there was a ton of talk about obviously changing the schedule, right, in MLS, and I wanted to get your take on this actually, because I think early on in the year, just to kind of set the scene a little bit, early on in the year, the MLSPA kind of came together and or MLS approached MLSPA about this schedule change that they're talking about, not for this year in June, but next year after the World Cup, where the MLS season would start. I think after that World Cup in the US, and so MLS, there would be a condensed season probably before the World Cup from January to May or whatever, and then the World Cup would happen, and then the full new MLS season would start. Playoffs would be in May. Regular season would go from August until probably April-ish, and then you'd have the playoffs set in that time frame with a little bit of a winter break. What's your take on that?
I actually, initially, this is one of those things where my take has progressed, right? I think it's important, the great philosophers of old, Aristotle, Plato, me, right? You have to be able to change your opinion over time. And initially, when I heard this, I loved it. I thought it was a great idea. I figured, obviously, you sprinkle in a winter break so that you're not playing in a snowdrift, particularly in the West,
Minnesota.
But yeah, Minnesota, right? We're not trying to get frostbite or whatever, right? And then you have Colorado and Utah, where you'd actually be underneath 8 feet of snow trying to play there in January sometimes, and so you need the winter break. But aligning with the global football calendar makes things like playing the season during the Gold Cup and Club World Cup obsolete. You don't have to deal with that stuff anymore, and more people can kind of get behind what's happening. But there is one reason I actually don't think that it's a good idea anymore.
Okay.
That would put MLS in direct conflict with a lot of major U.S. sports in a way that it is not as much right now. Because if you look at the way MLS calendar basically would run, right? If you were doing a winter skiing, and I, of course, I am somebody that would love for soccer to be the biggest sport in the U.S. I don't know if that's ever going to be true. I think it can become one of the biggest, right? But the U.S. is clearly a country that can support a lot of big sports, right? If you start in August, you're starting at the same time as college football and the NFL, right? Right when that's ramping up. And then that's going to carry the weekend, which other sports passionately avoid for the most part. That's going to carry your weekends until January. And then coming into the spring, when you're going to have the most important part of the MLS season, you're going to be in direct competition with the NBA and the NHL for, who's paying attention in the playoffs, who's watching, whatever. I think that it makes a lot of sense from a footballing standpoint for the schedule to change. I just think I'm surprised MLS is considering it, because they're usually first through the door in how do we maximize appealing to other sports fans, right? Which is not something I necessarily agree with, but that's something they really
general American, right?
Yeah, that's what they're targeting. I mean, they have to talk about that with you guys, especially when you're in those sorts of meetings, that's what they're trying to do.
So, well, first, I think they kind of nixed that idea of starting that later after the World Cup. That was kind of come out that I think the owners were against it, doing it right now, not completely saying no, but just right now, I think they felt like it was too short of a time period to really figure it out. I can tell you from a player's perspective, I want to say like 90% were for it.
That's high, but also
we wanted this change. We wanted this change as a player pool. I wanted this change as a player. I think it would have broken up the season in the right ways, and it would have given more credibility throughout the world, like you're saying. It would have ended a season, I think it would have had the most meaningful games coming into a new year where everybody's kind of refreshed and new, and you have a full winter break where maybe in January you could play a type of Leagues Cup, but only in the southern, states, where all those northern teams kind of come in January to go and play those Mexican teams in a Leagues Cup type format, and then you have 6, 7, 8 MLS games to finish out the year to then fully go into the playoffs. And for me, what you're saying about the schedule and about the competition with the other sports, you're going to compete with the NFL and college football throughout your playoffs now. So that's a big competition already, in my opinion, where Saturdays and Sundays are usually booked up, in that sense. And I think it is almost easier to compete with the NHL and the NBA playoffs in the spring, like in let's say the end of May or middle of May, than it is with the regular season of the NFL and college football. Because there's fewer games, you can schedule around it a little bit easier. I feel like you can have like an MLS game leading into an NBA game, or you have TV type mechanisms where not every game needs to be at 7 o'clock right at the same time as NBA games or whatever. Like, I get there's a lot and there's a lot of sports coverage in general, but you also like don't have everybody playing in every market, and so I think it would be cool to kind of find a way to coexist almost in those months. And again, you wouldn't have to worry about these types of issues now. You're playing through a Gold Cup, playing through a World Cup. What is next year even going to look like for us, right? It's a huge question mark. Like, are we playing through the World Cup? I don't know yet. Obviously you can't, but hey,
I mean,
you never know.
are there going to be enough facilities in the country to be able? I mean, there's going to be 48 national teams going around training, playing places. Like, can they even float that? I don't know.
Well, apparently Jorge Mas said in an ESPN article that he thinks they will figure it out this summer. All I can say as a player is that there needs to be a significant change in the current CBA. We talked about this extensively last week, I think, the collective bargaining agreement between the MLS and the MLS Players Association. There's a ton of stuff in there that is related to this specific schedule, the way it is set right now, with off days, with time away from the game, with when the playoffs are, with everything else included, and so there needs to be some sort of negotiating going on, and they can't just decide that, okay, now we're doing it this way. No, I think the players need to be at the table for this. So I kind of disagree with you. I think it would be a good change. I think it would be a good change, but I totally get your point. I mean, like you're saying, you have to find a way to compete with those sports in the US anyway.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I think maybe we both could be right in that. I'll say I think that what you need to do is get a few years after this World Cup and really take the league to the next level in terms of popularity before you switch the schedule. Yeah. I just think maybe going right after the World Cup will be too early, but we'll see. If Jorge Mas said that they're going to figure it out this summer, then maybe they figure out they want to do it in 2032 this summer, and then that kind of that accomplishes the goal of getting the league a little bit more into the mainstream before taking this leap in the first place. But I'm surprised. I guess I'm not. Now that you explained it, that 90% of people agreeing on anything is crazy. 90% of the players agreeing on this change.
Roughly, right? Like, obviously, I don't know exactly every player. We didn't have a vote or anything like that, but it was overwhelmingly supportive. Even like, I was on calls with teams. I was still in Florida at that time, so I was on representing Inter Miami. I think my viewpoint, obviously it changes, right? If you're in Miami and you don't have to play through the summer, but you can play in January, oh, amazing. But if you're in Minnesota, you don't want to be playing in January. You want to be playing in July and August. So that obviously changes. But even for those northern teams, I was on a call with Toronto, for example, and those guys were still for it. They still wanted
Toronto
this.
outdoors? Would that be the?
Yep.
Oof.
They're outdoors.
Hello.
But so there's Montreal. They usually don't have home games early on in the season. It's tough. Like, I think Minnesota's schedule was always built in a way where you have like 1 or 2 home games before the end of April, and then everything kind of after. So it would certainly have to be kind of a front-loaded schedule for those teams, right? Like it's not like you can start up in January or February again and say, okay, now we're just going to go back to regular play. Like I think that's difficult, right? You have to kind of play maybe 24, 26 games before that winter break, and then figure out something for like February, March, and then have like March, April be like just like 8 games to kind of finish out the year.
I'm sure that they can figure it out. And I had a different thought. I'm over here mulling what you're talking about, right?
This is live. We didn't even talk about this pregame. It's not even on the rundown.
No, this is pure. The MLS should hire us to figure this stuff out. Okay. I think that you might have an unintended impact of increasing the quality of the league if you shift the schedule. One, the thing that I wanted to say initially, kind of while you were talking, was that the overwhelming support of the players means this will happen eventually. I think that makes it impossible for it to not happen at some point if you have kind of half the negotiation, or that might be generous, a third of the negotiation, right? That desperately wants this to happen. It's going to happen. But I think you can increase the quality of play in the league because in the U.S., in the majority of the places that MLS plays, it is so hot in the summer. And you're hearing some of these Club World Cup guys already talking about how hot it is and I can't believe it. And then you look up the weather and it's 85, with no humidity, 85 Fahrenheit, which is in Celsius. Hold on, I'm going to do a little live conversion. Just play some elevator music or something.
82 Fahrenheit. Is 28. I know that. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We're basically talking about 29 Celsius. Then they're complaining about that. And it gets so much hotter. Obviously, you're laughing. You played in Miami. You know what I'm talking about. I just went and watched a game in the Club World Cup in Orlando. And look, my home state, I know what to expect. I'm still drenched in sweat, right? Like it is just like you're wearing a blanket of heat when you're playing in those types of places. But San Diego, even a place like Kansas City, in the dead of June and July, it gets so hot in these places, where part of the reason that European leagues are able to play in such a gegenpressing way is that most of them don't have to deal with this heat, where at times you'll see teams walking around and everything. This could be just too big brained. Am I onto something? Like, could not playing games in all this heat in June and July actually make MLS better in some way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, usually games tend to be quite slow, right? And then if you add midweek games and in weeks where you have 3 games, like you're going to get rotated squads. The squads aren't as deep as in Europe, so the quality, maybe goes down. It's obviously a trickle down effect of that. Of 100%, you're right. It makes a ton of sense in that way. And it's just tough because I always get back to when we talk about these climate changes and the flight distances and all those types of things in the US. It's just what makes MLS unique. Like it's like no other league in the world. That's just the way it is. And obviously these guys complaining about the heat. I had to chuckle as well when I saw that. I think they were playing in LA and it was like 80. So it's LA. Like it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's 80 all year round in LA. I don't even know. I'm trying to look up which player it was that actually complaining about it. It was Man City midfielder Tiani Reinders. He's Dutch, so I guess I get that. It maybe never gets that hot, or not a lot in the Netherlands. But
what did I see today? I think I saw Niklas Süle from Dortmund. Dortmund, I think they played in Miami. I think so. But I think they were in Florida because they trained at Miami's training facility. I know that. I think they played in Miami, and he was like, "We're all pachanas," he said, pitch like wet, like just like completely drenched, and it didn't even rain. That was his quote. We're all so wet, and it just completely drenched, and it didn't even rain. Like, this is translated from me to English. But
that's the Florida experience, though. Like you were as wet as if it was pouring rain after playing a game or whatever.
After walking outside for 10 minutes.
Oh my God. I had high school football practices where I swear the air coming up from the ground was even hotter than the air coming. I mean, I'm sure you ran into this at training every once in a while, where it's
That's
like right
right.
after it rains and the mud is getting heated up, and it's just you just feel like you're in an oven. And I can understand how Niklas Sula experiencing that for a first time would break out some really fancy German to describe it. That makes
That's right. That's right. So, how was your Club World Cup experience? Let's talk about it.
true. It was. I'm very torn on this competition. I'll be very honest with you. I know you probably have your opinions on it. We've talked about it a couple of times, but now I've put boots on the ground. Right. I have put my money where my mouth is. I've been to 2 games. I went to a big one in MetLife, Palmeiras Porto, and I went to Mamelodi Sundowns v Ulsan HD Park, right, in Orlando, which there were the official attendance was like 3,400. I would have probably gone 2,000, 2,500, right? Hardy souls. There were little fan sections from each team, which is miraculous considering it's like a 20-hour travel day to get there from, those 2 countries. But it is undeniably interesting. Okay. The games are interesting to watch because I think most football matches that are played, even in the Champions League these days, basically all of them, everybody going on the field really knows what to expect, right? These are teams that have very likely been there before, right? These are opponents that even if you haven't played them a lot before, you know who they are. Maybe just because they're in FIFA or the competition is familiar. Particularly at the first game with Palmeiras and Porto, there was a feeling of, I don't want to say confusion, but just like nobody knew what to expect. I don't think the players knew like how much the other team was going to care. Yeah. It was almost like they're trying to figure out, is this a friendly? Like, what's the effort level? Like, how hard are we playing? And then, somebody crunches a tackle, somebody gets in somebody's face, and all of a sudden the match is kind of going. But there's a fascinating mystery that obviously Mamelodi Sundowns playing Ulsan. I mean, these are 2 teams that are literally worlds apart.
Here he is now. Arthur Salles finds the ball to fellow Brazilian. He's Raiders.
You're watching, and I know this because of Football Manager, 2 teams that have very strict foreign player rules. So, I mean, Mamelodi Sundowns they can only have 4 foreign players. And
where are they from?
I met one of them. This is serious boots on the ground stuff for me here. I met the wife of one of the players, and he was Brazilian. He's from Brazil. And hear me out. They've lived there since August, and he signed with Mamelodi Sundowns for this tournament. The selling point was, you come Club play for Mamelodi Sundowns, you'll be able to play in the Club World Cup. And so they moved to South Africa. His name, I believe, is Arthur Salles. His wife or fiance or girlfriend and their daughter were adorable and very, very nice. And I talked to him for a while. And they moved there in August. Her English is getting better and everything. And he plays with Mamelodi Sundowns so he could play in the Club World Cup.
Was he the one that scored? No?
No,
1-0, right?
It was... I couldn't even tell you which one counted because Mamelodi Sundowns scored 3 goals in the first half, but 2 were disallowed on a VAR review after the fact. So I think it was the second one, but I can't somehow, with the haze and the humidity, I can't like even pull out of my mind. I know it wasn't him because I was looking out for him. Because the little girl, as I'm sure you're familiar, was wearing the jersey that says like "Daddy" with the number on the back. Yeah, but it was. I looked it up. It's 2 Brazilian dudes. He's one of them. And I believe he was an Argentine. He was a South American of some distinction that wasn't Brazilian. So those guys, I mean, you think about adventure. They're playing in the South African League to be in
South Africa,
So there was a balding, I believe he was Bosnian player on Ulsan, and he obviously stood out. But
so Ulsan is in South Korea, right?
Korean team. Yeah, they're in South Korea, and they've, as one of their fans educated me, they've played in the Club World Cup twice before. Wow. This is just, this is obviously the big one. And so they're all excited. I don't know. Would you move to South Africa to play in the Club World Cup? What do you make of that story?
No. I would not. I mean, it's cool for him. Like, I don't know. I guess it's an experience. And if you don't, like, if you want to achieve that, and if you set that as one of your goals to be part of that tournament and to be on a team that is successful like that, then hey, you get the opportunity, you do it, and you get to go to the US and play in Orlando, have that experience. But not for me. I mean, I don't think this tournament is yet one to really like fully be like, this would be a really cool thing to be a part of and to be like in it. Like, I'm sure if I was on Inter Miami and I would actually be playing in it, I would say something different. But now that I'm not there and I've kind of like got to terms with, okay, I'm not going to be part of that experience, I think, it's like, for me, I'm okay with that, and I'm not really like regretting not playing in it. I think one day would it be really cool to play in it for sure. Like, it would, to qualify the right way to get into the tournament and really be part of.
Whoa,
Maybe,
is that some shade at Inter Miami there for
no,
getting?
it's not. We qualified. I count that as qualifying.
I do
Winning the
too.
Supporters Shield.
I mean,
Because
I
we
view it
won
really
something.
as so. For those that don't know, Inter Miami got in as the selected host nation team, and the reason they were picked, allegedly, even though they were picked because Messi's on the team, right? They were picked because they had the most points in the regular season, which is an impossible thing to argue against. Like, it is.
Yeah.
You had the best regular season ever. Sorry, continue.
They should. They should have just said that. They should have come out and just made it that. But yes, that's why I feel like we won it. But I think to qualify for something like that in the future and to really earn your way into that, because right now it's like this start, right, of like teams got invited because of past things that that the club did, and it's not so recent, and this is obviously a first, almost like a trial tournament, I want to say, like a prelude to the
Oh,
World Cup
absolutely.
next year.
It feels like a trial tournament. You know what it feels like right now is the Confed Cup, where they're like warming up. If you remember the Confed Cup, it was this international tournament before the year before the World Cup, where they'd warm up they basically warm up the stadiums. I feel like that's kind of what this is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it feels like. So I think having this every 4 years with, big clubs around the world that can qualify throughout different processes over those, 3-4 years before, I think it can get to a point where it's really a highlight. It can become a big highlight in a player's career and a club's, pursuit for another major trophy. There's real money behind it. Obviously, it's FIFA, right? Like, they're not just gonna do it at one time and then just say, okay, let's forget about this again. No, I think it'll only get bigger, only get more important, and I also believe that as the rounds go on, and we will be talking about this over the next few weeks, I'm sure, it'll be more feisty. Like, it'll get more feisty, it'll get more serious. Guys will want to win it, all those types of things. So I think it'll become something bigger, and you have to get it off the ground. And right now we're like right there, ground zero. Like, this is like the first stage of what is going to be so multi-layered down the line.
Yeah, two things. One, I think their biggest mistake, and you kind of alluded to this, was they should have announced it 4 years in advance and then allowed teams over those next 4 years to qualify. Like, oh, you have, because such a big thing around the actual World Cup is the journey to qualify, right? It's this, it kind of jump scares a lot of people where, oh, I guess World Cup qualifying is happening, but then you're really paying attention to it and you have to go through this process and every nation in the world is there. And the whole idea with the Club World Cup would be, well, hey, every nation, every club in the world theoretically has a chance to make it to this tournament, right? And over 4 years, we're all going to qualify. Like, a big issue for this tournament for me has been the way they've promoted it. And that's down to where it's broadcast. It's on DAZN in the US, right? Because they're the global broadcast partner because they dropped a ton of money.
Yeah.
People in the US, and I realize we have an international audience, so you might not know this. People in the United States don't know what DAZN is. Like, never use it. It is not, I had to explain what it was to my dad when he was, oh, how can I watch this game, right, that you're at, right? It's not even in the same realm as Peacock or some of these other streaming services that maybe don't get talked about as much. It's really never used in the US unless you fall for it and decide to buy a KSI fight or something. So I think that hurts. The way it's been advertised hurts. And then they're playing games in the middle of the day on like a Tuesday.
Yeah. I think that was the Chelsea LAFC game in Atlanta. Oh. So you have an MLS team, a local team in the host country playing, a team from LA playing in Atlanta. So about, what is that, 5-hour flight?
If you're
Flight
lucky,
over
yeah.
on a midday on a Tuesday against, I mean, obviously Chelsea, but I think attendance was obviously poor, and I think attendance has been bad. But it would be interesting to see the numbers in terms of TV. I'm sure it'll change, right, when the quarterfinals happen and all that type of stuff. Like when it gets down to semifinals and stuff. Like if there's, I don't know, Man City playing Real Madrid in a semifinal game, I'm sure people will tune in to watch, right? Like, I think it would be interesting to see, and especially non-Americans that know about the zone.
Yeah,
Um,
seriously.
but you're right. I think in saying how weird those games are scheduled and doesn't really help, in terms of what I feel like what they're trying to achieve, and that is by warming up the stadiums for the World Cup next year.
Yeah, I think they're prioritizing that international audience, but not completely. It's like they're trying to. There's a line from Parks and Recreation from Ron Swanson, the venerable Ron Swanson, and he says, "Don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing." Right, and it feels like the way they've scheduled the games, which is basically the same as they schedule World Cup games, but the World Cup is the World Cup. You're going to get 4 billion people watching it. You don't have to. You could do literally any. You could schedule them at midnight on a Sunday. Everybody would watch it. They have kind of 4 games throughout the day, assuming that it's going to have the same pull. And what that's doing is you're getting the early games that nobody goes to because it's in the middle of a workday, and it's, no offense to Mamelodi Sundowns or Ulsan, but they're not like huge draws that people want to go to. And then you have these games that are starting at 9-10 p.m. Eastern, right? 21, 22. And that's 3-4 a.m. in Europe, where I talked to people at the game in Orlando that went, yeah, we haven't really watched it the first couple of games before we came on vacation to Disney World and ended up at this game because they're on in the middle of the night. And so nobody's watching them. So they're not really targeting the TV audience. They're not really targeting the people in person. And I think that they're just going to end up with a lot of egg on their face over the course of this tournament. But like you said, FIFA can eat that. And they're just going to keep pushing forward. And I guess it's up to us to decide whether we care or not eventually.
Yeah, right. But are you going to tune in and watch throughout the tournament? Probably, right?
I'll be honest. I've caught myself at least looking up the scores. Yeah. I mean, I'm a whore for a good tournament. I really am. You give me a bracket, you give me groups. I'll be watching the West Asian Football Federation tournament, right? If it's some sort of competition. So I'm probably not the best test, but it is.
I mean, the alternative right now, there's no other games.
Hey,
right?
Gold
There's
Cup.
no leagues.
Hey,
well, that's what I was going to get to.
Hey.
But there's no other games, and then you have a tournament like the Gold Cup that is also simultaneously going on, but that is more geared towards obviously only the CONCACAF region, right? Like it's played here, it's played at night. Like there's no day games, where day games are broadcasted in Europe during the nighttime, like a 3:00 game on the East Coast in Germany is 9:00, for example. So there is a different audience for those, I think, games. And I mean, I'll be watching throughout the quarterfinals and semifinals, and maybe not, like you said, right now, every single minute, but I'll be able to tune in just because, I'm interested in how Xabi Alonso does with his new team, how Trent does at Real Madrid, and how, Inter Miami does and Seattle and LAFC, obviously. Like I'm interested in that. And for you to get to a game that you just went to, and even Palmeiras versus Porto, you would have never seen that game, right? It's in New York, like MetLife Stadium. Like what a cool experience,
I'll tell you, who we're over here making our mind up whether we want to care about this or not, and we're kind of both lukewarm and I'll watch the big games, whatever. I think Europe is really in that boat. And I think America, like MLS type fans, are also in that boat, right? There's the animosity between the players and the owners, and it's just not a real kumbaya start for CONCACAF in this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who does care. The South Americans. They care. They have decided that this tournament is like where they're going to make their stand. In that stadium at MetLife, it was half full. The half that was full was all Palmeiras. and a lot of them had come from Brazil, and it was loud. Like, even though the stadium was half full, you really didn't notice it while you were there because it was just so loud. And I've seen people, obviously living in New York, walking around the streets in Palmeiras jerseys all over the place.
Yeah,
I saw
that's cool.
one. I flew back in today from Orlando, right? I saw one getting off the subway. I'm like, dude, you played 5-6 days ago. They're still here rocking up with the shirts. And it's not just South America, the African fans. I know ES Tunis, they like took over Times Square at one point. And I would imagine if you played one of these in Japan or South Korea, they'd be going nuts. Yeah. Because the hardy South Korean fans that I met in Orlando on a Tuesday, right? They were singing the whole game. There was only, 50, 100 of them, but they were singing the whole game. They had the whole get up. And the Mamelodi fans I talked to too, they care. They're so excited to see their teams play in this type of tournament. They really are. And so I think if this tournament is a success, it's because the other continents carry it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need another Champions League, right? I think that's the big thing. You don't need another one. You need to have these other teams like Brazilian teams and, whatever, like Mexican teams, American teams show up, South African teams show up and play games that, they would never get to play in otherwise, or people would never be able to see them otherwise. So I think for that reason, that tournament is good. And yeah, we'll just have to see kind of how it goes on and how it continues. But I think, like you said, to bring out that passion in fans and maybe there's Brazilians living in New York that haven't watched Palmeiras in years, right? They can't get down to Brazil for whatever reason and all that stuff. Now they come in and they get to watch him, I don't know, like it means a lot to them. So cool experience.
I came away from the game like, I don't know if this tournament's viable or important, but I'm happy for these people. Good for them. You know who else I was happy for? Just in my late night viewing? Guatemala. No other podcast is going to mention Guatemala, but they beat Jamaica in the Gold Cup.
Towards the right goalpost. Touch the long, low, the back heel, that's clever. It's in.
And that fully has me paying attention to the Gold Cup. Oh, also,
yes, they did.
The U.S. won. Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know why a team like Guatemala is not better. That whole stadium was full. It was like Guatemala City in there. They were playing in L.A. and it was bumping. It was a home game and they won 1-0. So I'm just very happy for them. But do you have any thoughts on Guatemala, Julian?
Not as many as you, but I'm happy that the U.S. won. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah, that was a therapeutic win. 5-0 against Trinidad and Tobago. For those that didn't catch it.
Back still, McGlynn to the back post. Settled. Tillman scores. Go Luna with some options. Luna centering. Tillman. Luna cutting in. Luna going for goal. Deflected and in. Brendan Aronson cutting in field. Aronson going for goal and scoring. Barreling in, cutting in. Haji Ride, far post.
No problems. Kind of nice to have an easy one. And like you said, therapeutic a little bit to kind of get the vibes back a little bit. Maybe they did that retreat that we talked about last week. Maybe they were just kind of like, did like 3 hours of meditating and just chilled, I don't know. I gotta ask some of the guys I know.
The Aaron Rodgers ayahuasca thing. I thought that's what they might
Maybe
have
did a light version. Yeah.
Oh, well, I was just going to say they might have slipped some of that to Trinidad and Tobago because Clint Dempsey said that was the worst Trinidad and Tobago team he'd ever seen.
Of course he says that after the U.S. wins. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Wow, just coming out here
credit.
Devaluing this performance. No, I mean, look, it is a baby step in the right direction, but it is a step in the right direction. There was a part of me that legitimately feared some sort of freak draw or something that would put the U.S. in jeopardy of not getting out of the group stage. So it's at least nice to know that the U.S., even if it is struggling against Switzerland and Turkey, can blow out Trinidad and Tobago. Because as we may know, that is not always been the case. So,
Yeah. Can you believe they even had 9 MLS guys on that starting lineup? Wow.
Look, I'm happy for the U.S. I tend to agree with Clint Dempsey. This is a team that went to a World Cup with a 32-team World Cup in 2006. They have fallen quite a ways away, but there's not really been a huge surprise at any point in the Gold Cup so far. We're obviously going to be keeping track of it as it kind of continues on this podcast. Costa Rica did get a bit of a scare from Suriname, which one of my sleeper picks to potentially make their first World Cup. They're dangerous. They had a 3-2 lead on Costa Rica before they came back. But they're back in action tonight, actually. So by the time you're listening to this podcast, Suriname might have done something special. But how much stock do you put in a Gold Cup like this, though? I'm interested in a player's perspective. If, let's say, the U.S. does go on and win it, even though the best players aren't there.
I would be nice. I think it would give you a good feeling winning that trophy. Because I think eventually you'll play better teams down the line, probably quarterfinal, semifinal, depending on the draw. So you have to, be at your best with the players that you've got. And these guys are all guys on that squad that are fighting for a spot in the World Cup. And, if you were to play against Mexico or Canada that do have really good rosters there, then, great. I think that's a really good way to kind of carry that forward with you while your other guys are returning. You can set the standard, right? You have to set the standard, and that's going out there winning and trying to really beat everybody. And I think you have to find the feeling, you have to find something in the fan, that kind of gets them excited, and winning this Gold Cup, I think, would mean a lot. Not just for the players that are there, but also in general for the federation to, like you said, have the breath of fresh air to kind of get out of that slump a little bit and kind of positive into the new year and World Cup year, right?
Yeah, I think it's almost a no-lose situation for the U.S. at this point. I mean, I think that about all these Gold Cups where maybe the best players don't go. I mean, the lose situation is, well, don't go lose in Trinidad and Tobago because then, we're going to have to light everything on fire again.
Yeah.
But if the U.S. makes the semifinal and loses to Canada or Mexico, it's easy to look at the team and go, oh, well, we didn't have we didn't have the best guys on the field, so these guys did well to get us to this point. But then, of course, if they go win the whole thing, then it's, you should see us when our, game's on, right? We just did this with like the B team guys. Of course, the way the A team guys are playing, if the B team guys do that, why not just make them the A team guys at this point? Because Diego Luna needs to be on the field no matter what happens. I love that man. I love his style. I love the attitude he brings. He feels like an old school American player. I don't know if you've had he brings something back in a way.
Yeah. Oh, he's exciting for sure. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
And that we will. We'll keep you know me. I'm going to make Julian talk about Guatemala and Suriname, and we'll be back with Gold Cup soon. But it's time to get to your questions that you've asked of us. We have 2 today. And the first came from Chris on Instagram. So Chris, thank you very much. This one is for both of us. What's your biggest football pet peeve?
Do you want to go first? I have to think about this.
Oh, I can, but I want to give mine a little bit of thought as well. It's a very good question, Chris.
Oh, I got one.
Oh, yes. What is it?
Oh, yeah, I got one. Oh, I got a good one. Oh, yeah. That gets me riled up right now. Oh my gosh.
I can see it in the eyes. What is it?
It's when it's somewhat hot outside and let's say make it even worse. Let's make it even worse. There's a guy coming off the bench, about to be subbed in, with his shorts rolled up and his socks low. You know what I'm talking about? When you roll up your shorts and you show the whole thigh.
This is like the Alexis Sanchez kind of taking a free kick look. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
You can see the tan line. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the tan line, and you have your socks low and your shorts rolled up, and you kind of just look like you're about to rule this game or whatever, but you get subbed in with 5 minutes left in the game in a regular season MLS game. I'm like, dude, come on. I don't like rolled up shorts in general. I think there's something so arrogant about them that I don't know, just like wear your shorts the right way. Nobody needs to see your thighs. Like just you don't need to roll them up. I don't know why you're doing it in the first place. It doesn't even feel better. So but then if somebody does it as a substitute, I'm like, oh wow, this guy's feeling himself coming onto the field right now.
It's like your version of the Anthony face. You know what I'm talking about? You're getting ready to sub in. There's like 3 minutes left, but you're acting like you're going to conquer the world or something.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. That is a very specific thing to be a football pet peeve. Now I feel like I need to readjust my answer because that's such a good one. My general football pet peeve, I was going to say, like flopping, but I need to be more specific with that. There's a certain way that there's just, I don't know how to answer this without offending somebody. We're just going to go anyways. There is a certain way that South Americans flop, particularly the Argentina national team, that is so unbelievably over the top. Like, I am somebody that is in the trenches my entire life. I grew up in Florida, like, hell yeah, brother, part of Florida, right? American football, steak, potatoes, soccer was seen as a soft sport. Yeah. The reason it's seen as a soft sport is this Argentine flop that they have perfected that is just somebody breathes on you and they hold a completely different part of their body and they're smiling underneath their hand. Somebody's smiling underneath their people. They need to start handing out red cards for that stuff. Yeah. Because you want the number one reason that people think the sport is soft when it actually, obviously you freaking play it at the professional level, is not. It's very physical and very difficult to play and tough. And they just can't. That is such a problem. And I know it's probably the only thing. I try to be very logical. I know it's the right move from them, right? Try and waste every second you can. Try to get every call you can. That's every incentive. I will still get mad about it every time. I was frothing at the mouth in that World Cup final at points, just losing it. And I am a certified Argentina national team hater just because of the way they flop. Not Messi, but like the national team.
But you know who I think of when I think of flopping? I think of Neymar.
Yeah.
Like in his young days, he would flop.
There was something different about it. I don't know. Maybe
like when you say the hand in his face smiling like that, I picture Neymar just laying on the ground, just like getting fouled like 18 times in like the span of 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's
the Brazilians too. That's all I wanted to say.
No, it is. It's not just them, right? It's the Italians. We can throw this around in a lot of different directions. Mexico's definitely been guilty of this all over the place. There is just, and I think it really dawned on me in that World Cup run, there is an aggression to the Argentine flopping. It's almost like they will punch you in the back of the head and then you flick them and they fall. It's that sort of. My football pet peeve is Argentina's time wasting. That's the answer. Okay. Mike on TikTok. This is our second question. It's for both of us again. Of the top 10 teams in the world, would Christian Pulisic start for any of them?
Ooh, getting serious here.
That is. Okay, so top 10 teams in the world. You got to go Real Madrid, Liverpool, Bayern. We can probably check off.
Well, is Milan a top 10 team in the world?
I was going to say probably not because they were 8th or 9th in Serie A this year. Okay. But, within the last couple of years, they definitely have been. I would put Inter there. I'd put Barcelona there, obviously. PSG, obviously. You got, 4 team spots left? I think he would. Current form.
I think so too.
2 years ago, no. But my answer would be yes because, he's versatile. Hell, Tuchel was playing him at fullback, I think. And he's in a very rich vein of form right now. He's a hell of a player.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's the type of player that when he doesn't have to be the guy, he's better. And unfortunately for the national team, most of the time he needs to be the guy. Does that make sense? Like he's like, everybody's looking at you to make stuff happen, to like lead the team in goals, assists, whatever. at Milan, maybe they weren't, or they didn't expect that out of him, and he kind of grew into that. Um, but it wasn't expected from the start. But I agree with you. I think he's been in a tremendous form for I think club and country. I think he's played pretty well, and I think he would start for a top 10 team. I think it would be hard to keep him off the field, especially the way um, with the way he's been playing for Milan. I think for sure he would start.
I think this is a very good distinction to draw because I mean this applies to even more sports than just football, than just soccer. Is he is a sensational complementary player.
Yeah.
Right, like just a piece that you can plug in and play at an incredible level with other kind of great players around him. And there are other players that I would say aren't great complementary players. They need to be the focus, but maybe they can only be the focus, the main guy at a certain level.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why construction of a team is so important. But I think that particularly in those last 3 or 4 spots for teams, maybe past Arsenal. So you give him top 7 teams, that 8, 9, 10 spot.
Yeah.
I think he's absolutely on the field a lot for those teams.
Yeah. I agree.
Easy.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. On TikTok, I think that was our first ever TikTok question that we've ever been asked. You did have one special thing before we head out, though, that we wanted to make sure we touched on, because we had the giveaway, obviously, the jersey giveaway. Our condolences if you did not win.
Yes.
Tim Silver, who won, actually got to meet you at the game on Saturday, which is incredibly cool.
Yeah. So he, as we announced it last week, he reached out, and, our producer and I, we were chatting, and Tim was saying how, he'll be in the Wonder Wall. He's one of the supporters standing in the Wonder Wall behind the home games, and he was going to be at the game this weekend. So I was like, hey, instead of me spending $5 to ship it to your house, why don't I, come over after the game and give it to you? We take a picture, and I can, hand it over to you in person. And, unfortunately, the game didn't go the way we wanted to. So it was much quieter in Wonderworld than I would have liked. But I was still able to get the jersey from my wife after the game and run over there with my daughter and give it to him, take a quick pic, congratulate him, talk to him, and say thank you for listening and all the support, obviously. So it was nice to meet him. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for participating, and sorry to all the other participants that did not win. But again, we'll do some more.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for your first item to be given away.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say I'm going to sign this shirt and then get my editors to sign it or something. Like Gadget, the people that edit the podcast, and then we'll ship that out. So let us know if you'd be interested in that in the Instagram comments, on YouTube, whatever, and be sure to leave your questions there as well, so we can potentially get to them next week or some point in the future. Thank you guys so much for listening. The Player Manager fam grows, and be sure to subscribe on YouTube. That's what we started with. That's what we'll end with. Julian?
Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Beautiful.